You ever have one of those days where the world seems perfectly ordinary, then out of nowhere, bam, someone flips your whole reality upside down? Yeah, that happened to me. And let me tell you, what followed was wild enough to make even a preacher cuss. So let me back up a sec and set the stage, because you gotta see it like I did. Picture Morrison's Diner, corner of Trade and Fifth, sunlight bouncing off the front windows, the sizzle of bacon in the back, that old bell above the door, chiming every few minutes like it's trying to keep time for the regulars. That's where I've spent 15 years, tying on my apron before dawn, putting two of my kids through college, paying the bills, never once missing a Sunday at Mount Olive. Most folks don't know my name is Grace Williams, but everyone in this part of Charlotte knows the woman who always remembers if you like your coffee strong, if you need a little extra syrup for your pancakes, or if you've had a rough week and just want a quiet booth by the window. It's the kind of place where you come for the food, but you stay because you feel like family. That Tuesday, I started my shift like any other, arranging fresh flowers on table 6, just like my grandma used to do, cracking a joke with Kenny back in the kitchen, making sure Mrs. Chun from the flower shop next door got her sweet tea with no ice. Sometimes, I'd look around and think, you know what, this is enough for me. Not fancy, but it's home. But fate, as they say, had other plans. Around 9:15, this sleek black sedan pulls up and out steps a man in a suit that probably costs more than I make in a month. He's on the phone, voice loud, face pinched, looking like somebody ruined his day before he even got his coffee. He walks in, gives the place a once-over, like he's checking for dust, and sits in the corner, still barking at somebody about stock prices and board meetings. Didn't take a genius to know. This man was troubled. I go over, smile my best smile, offer him some coffee, because hey, everyone deserves kindness, right? And he looks up at me, pauses, then lets his eyes crawl across my face, down to my name tag, back around the diner. And then, in this voice so smooth it's almost slimy, he goes, "Actually, I don't think you should be serving me at all." Now, I've dealt with my share of difficult customers, drunks, cheapskates, you name it. But something about the way he said that, the way his eyes just dared me to react, made my stomach drop. He introduces himself, Richard Blackstone, some big shot who owns half the buildings on the block, and lets me know, real clear, that someone like me doesn't belong here. Says this is a respectable neighborhood now. Stares straight at me like I'm a stain on his perfectly pressed suit. You know that feeling when the world goes quiet all at once? That's what happened. I felt every pair of eyes in the diner swing my way, like a slow-motion car crash. Kenny nearly drops his spatula in the back. Mrs. Chun freezes with her fork halfway to her mouth. Mr. Peterson, God bless him, just stops breathing altogether. Richard says, plain as day, I want her fired. Now, says if Kenny has a problem, he can make some calls, shut us down. And for a second, I swear I felt my legs wobble. 15 years of getting up early, of raising my babies, of serving this community, all of it flattened by a stranger who couldn't see past my skin. But here's the thing about getting knocked down over and over. You learn to stand back up. My voice shook a little when I said, "Sir, I don't know what I've done to upset you, but I promise I just want to serve good food and treat folks with kindness." He snaps back, "You exist. In my neighborhood. Serving in my properties. That's enough." That hit me in the gut. I could see Kenny ready to jump in, fists clenched, but I held up a hand, because this was my fight, and I knew it. I took off my apron, laid it on the counter like it was a flag, and looked Richard dead in the eye. "It is personal," I said, "because when you look at me and see something less than human, that's as personal as it gets." I picked up the little photo I keep by the register. Me at my college graduation, kids on each side, the proudest day of my life. I told him, I've got 3 kids, 12 grandbabies, and more people who love me in this city than you could count on your fingers and toes. I serve more than food here. I serve love. And just as I'm about to walk out, door chimes. In comes this tall, distinguished black man in a navy suit, followed by a younger woman with a briefcase. You could feel the air shift. He walks right up to Richard, hand out, and says, "I'm Judge William Harrison, recently retired from the North Carolina Supreme Court. And this is my daughter, Attorney Sarah Harrison." Now, If you could have seen Richard's face, boy, I wish I had a camera. Judge Harrison says, real calm. Discriminating against someone based on race in a public place isn't just wrong, it's a federal crime. Sarah sets her briefcase on the table, looks Richard dead in the eyes, and says, we're prepared to pursue this if necessary. Kenny pipes up, shaking. Grace is the heart of this place. Judge Harrison nods, tells Richard he's heard every word through the window, and reminds him that the city council might want to revisit a few licenses. You could see the color drain out of Richard's face like someone pulled the plug. He tries to backpedal. It's a misunderstanding. I was having a bad day. I didn't mean it. But everyone knows you don't say things like that by accident. And you know what? In that moment, I surprised myself. I looked at him, voice steady as a rock, and said, but you did mean it. And I forgive you anyway. You could have heard a pin drop. Kenny started crying. Mrs. Chun brought over flowers. Even Mr. Peterson finally set his coffee down. Now here's the twist. Instead of walking out, I tied my apron back on and went to pour Richard a fresh cup of coffee. Because that's who I am, I told him, and nobody can take that away from me. He stared at me, looking for the catch, like maybe I was going to spit in his cup or something. But I poured that coffee, handed it to him with a smile, and said, my grandmother always told me, darkness can't drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Judge Harrison grinned and told Richard, that's grace in action, the kind that builds communities, not tears them down. Sarah quietly said they wouldn't press charges because of what I'd done, but she hoped he'd think about what his actions really meant. Richard just nodded, blinking back tears he didn't want anyone to see. Then, something wild happened. Word spread through the neighborhood. People started pouring in, not for the food, but for me. Hugs, flowers, kind words, even a collection so I could take a day off. Strangers dropped by to say thank you. And all the while, Richard sat in his corner, watching. When he finally got up to leave, he stopped by the counter, voice shaking. You showed me something today I forgot existed. I squeezed his hand and said, honey, it's never too late to remember. So here's what I learned. Sometimes your biggest heartbreaks open the door to your greatest moments. Sometimes, showing grace is the strongest thing you can do. And as the sun set over Morrison's diner, I realized I hadn't just stood up for myself. I'd reminded everyone in that little corner of Charlotte that dignity, kindness, and forgiveness still mattered. So, what do you think? Was I right to forgive him? Is grace always the answer? Or do some folks just not deserve it? Tell me below, because stories like this, they don't end. Not really. Not as long as people keep talking about what's right, what's fair, and what it means to stand up for each other.